Hello and welcome to the Wednesday edition of Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Kimberley Hoeppner and today is May 15th, 2019. You can always get our information by dialing the 1-800 number for your forecast, 1-800-472-0391, or you can always go to the World Wide Web at weather.gov/Alaska and then just click around on the locations of your choice. And if you ever have any questions or suggestions for our show, feel free to email our TV lead, and that is david.snider@noaa.gov. Now in just a moment, we're going to be on with your public marine and aviation forecast, but we're going to first start with the main concerns across the area. Across the state, we have a red flag warning, and that is out through 9 p.m. this evening. That is for some windy conditions that are developing out of the east across that area between 20 and 30 miles per hour, and seeing temperatures climbing into the lower 70s this afternoon across that middle Tanana Valley. That combined with the relative humidities going down to 15% is going to cause high fire danger. So anything that would be ignited could get quickly out of control. So be cautious if you're planning any fires. You shouldn't be planning any fires for today. Now, let's go on to the Wednesday breakup map. This was created today on the 15th. And for the southern tier of the state, of course, breakup has already occurred for most of these locations. There's still some ice, however, on the interior locations over through the Yukon Delta. But what the biggest change we're going to see as we head in through the next week is that we're going to see some melting beginning across those northern rivers and along the north slope, as the temperatures are going to be hovering at or just above the freezing mark at times. Now let's take a look at the fire danger across the state. We're looking at the main areas for fire danger across the central interior and down through the Copper River Basin. So these are the areas you're going to be watching very closely as we head through the next several days. I can move off here so you can see the southeast. They're not in any threats of fire danger at the moment. They've seen some rain as of recent, and there's more rain on the way. So let's first start with the weather patterns across the Gulf. Taking a look out there, we can see a broad circulation around an upper level feature that's just moving up into the southern waters. This is driving a surface front, we'll get to that in just a moment, into the western areas of the Gulf. Now, along the eastern edge of this system, we are seeing some clouds and showers developing for the southeast as we have some upper level waves rotating around the system. Now across the interior, energy moving inland brings some showers just along the southern tier of the state, mainly for the Wrangell Mountains there to the east. And then there are some continuing showers as we do have low pressure that's lingering across the western areas of the state. So I'll take and put this into motion. You can see there's just a very slow rotation off the Kuskokwim Delta coast here. And then out towards the west, for the western bearing locations there at Shemya, we do have a transitional phase of a counterclockwise circulation as a ridge is building out there towards the west, and low pressure along the chain yesterday is being shoved down towards the south. Now the northern tier of the state is kind of in between systems with a upper level ridge just to the north and a weak low pressure system off the northwest coast. So fairly quiet conditions there with a little bit more of a stable air mass there along the northwest coast. They are seeing some fog conditions reducing down to 1 mile or less at times this afternoon. Now for the central interior, kind of dry and warm with the breaking up there in those clouds. And we do have those showers that are mainly along the western interior and coastal locations. Now the low pressure system out in the Gulf, that is brought an axis out towards the western waters. So we do have a little bit more rain activity spinning around the western areas of the Gulf. However, there are some lingering showers that, as I had mentioned, across the southeast. Those upper waves are just coming along counterclockwise around this system. Now, the low pressure system here that I have inland, that's just kind of developing with a thermal ridge that's building from the Canada border and over towards the west. So just warmer temperatures, and along the western areas, we are still seeing cooler temperatures persist. There to the north, like I said, this is in between systems, but we are seeing an increase of winds across the east coast this afternoon. And then across the western areas of the Bering, mainly just stable air mass drifting southwards brings some patchy fog conditions. Now taking a look at tonight's weather, not going to see too much change out here towards the west, just some persisting showers and patchy fog along the west coast, with showers continuing across the western interior. Pattern remains the same across the north. However, we will see an increase in the wind speeds across the eastern Beaufort seacoast. Gusts could reach as high as 45 miles per hour in those locations. Now across the interior, possible evening thunderstorms with the thermal trough that's settling in across the eastern areas of the state. Enough moisture is in place, so that's going to bring some heavy downpours at times. But the southern areas of the state are mainly just going to be under those lighter showers or light rain activity, with the low pressure system kind of moving towards the west as we head through the overnight hours. We should be mainly dry across the southeastern areas of the state tonight, with a few lingering showers in the evening and then tapering off. Could be some patchy fog out there towards Yakutat and working into Juneau and the northern channels there. But like I said, just patchy fog, shouldn't last very long. As we head into Thursday, we'll start out, the southeast will be dry. Upper level waves rotating around will bring some moisture streaming up from the eastern Pacific there, and that'll bring some rain into the Ketchikan area, and then with some light shower activity across the northern panhandle. For the southern mainland, low pressure is just going to keep a cloudy pattern, along the southern tier of the state, with some showers developing throughout the day. And then the focus along the Alaska Range and towards the western Alaska Range, we will have some possible thunderstorms developing with a thermal trough in place, and temperatures again expected to reach into the lower 70s. Across the northern tier of the state, here's the pattern with the easterly flow brings some gusts across the Brooks Range towards the northeastern Beaufort seacoast, and more of a northerly flow across the west coast down through the Bering Strait, with gusts there between 20 to 30 miles per hour expected. Now for much of the Bering on the eastern side, we're going to see some north, we're going to see snow showers, but mainly rain showers across the southern areas, including the Alaska Peninsula. Out there to the west, stable air mass is going to be on the cooler side, with clouds and patchy fog in the morning and overnight hours. Now take a look at your Friday weather. That weather pattern is going to persist through the end of the week, so look for thunderstorms mainly across the western interior and the southwestern areas of the state, with shower activity again across the southeast. So a little bit more shower activity for the southeast on Friday, tapering off across much of the western Gulf as that next low pressure system begins to track north. So for temperatures tonight, we're expecting mainly in the 40s to mid 40s along the Gulf coastal locations. Interior will be in the mid 40s along the north coast, dropping below the freezing mark for the Brooks Range and north and northwest coast. The western areas are going to see into the mid 30s, and then across much of the Bering, mainly in the mid 30s, but a little bit colder out there along the northern waters near the freezing mark. As we head into your day for Thursday, expect temperatures to rise. The warmest across the interior, again, as that thermal trough will bring warmer temperatures back towards the southwest coast tomorrow. Temperatures will reach from the 50s along the Gulf Coast. The northeast Gulf Coast towards Kodiak, maybe 49 degrees, a little bit cooler. And then across the interior, 60 to lower 70s. The north coast will creep up to that freezing mark and just over. Across the Bering waters, expect temperatures reaching into the mid 40s, while the southeast stays into the upper to mid 50s tomorrow. Now for your Friday morning, very similar temperatures as Thursday morning. Temperatures in the mid 40s across the interior, to the north below freezing, in the 40s across all the Gulf locations. And then for the Bering, a little bit cooler once again across the northern waters there near freezing, to the mid 40s or lower 40s, a little bit cooler for your Friday morning. And then very warm temperatures across the central interior once again.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
And now moving on to the aviation briefing portion of the show, we're going to take a look across the interior first. We're going to start your day off on Thursday with VFR conditions. Now for the southern tier of the state, we're going to see some MVFR conditions that are starting off your Thursday morning down through Prince William Sound and along the eastern Kenai, looking at VFR conditions across the southeast there, but the Gulf is going to be widespread MVFR and IFR conditions over there towards Kodiak Island. The west coast is also going to be in that MVFR category, widespread IFR and MVFR conditions all across the Bering waters. The north and northwest coast looking at MVFR to start your Thursday off with IFR across the northwest. Now as we head into the afternoon, not too much change across the northern tier of the state. Some clearing there across the eastern Beaufort waters. Across the west coast, MVFR is going to be hanging in there for your afternoon. And then across the Gulf, same persisting pattern with low pressure keeping MVFR to IFR conditions. Now for the afternoon, we're looking for thunderstorms to develop just north of the Alaska Range and along the interior locations. Now for the southeast, looking at a full day of VFR conditions for you. Now let's take a look at Friday morning. Friday morning, the southeast will see MVFR creeping back into their forecast there for the day, and then across the Gulf, IFR and MVFR is going to be widespread. Now for the interior locations, mostly VFR conditions until you get up to the Brooks Range, and then towards the North Slope, we're going to see MVFR and IFR widespread down through the Bering Strait. So the Seward Peninsula is going to be in those IFR and VFR conditions, which is also going to be widespread across the Bering locations. So the Alaska Peninsula to Dutch Harbor is going to see IFR for your Friday morning, and then the afternoon, some improvement to MVFR across much of the Bering. IFR is going to be hanging on along the west coast and the north coast there. Thunderstorms are again going to be possible during the afternoon hours mainly. And then for the Gulf locations, seeing MVFR into the southeast, however, some improvement for south central, so staying in that VFR category, and then just the coastal locations in MVFR category. Now let's take a look at your passes in more depth. We'll see Anaktuvik on your Thursday, MVFR improving to VFR late day. Adigan will be also MVFR to VFR. We'll see Lake Clark and Merrill Pass VFR all day. Rainy Pass will go from MVFR to VFR later in the day. Windy will be VFR, looking at Isabel, going from MVFR to VFR. For your Mentasta Pass, a VFR day for you as well as Isabel, but Tanita is going to be MVFR. There's Portage, MVFR is going to improve to VFR, and Chilkoot and White Pass is going to be VFR for the day. Now let's take a look at your freezing levels to start your Thursday morning. You see this white line is draped across the Brooks Range, and then the 2,000 foot level is going to increase to 6,000 feet across much of the interior locations, and then slowly drop to 2,000 feet across the Bering, which will be 2,000 feet across the entire Bering, where the Gulf will be in the 4,000 foot range. So let's go on and look at your icing. That your main icing concerns are going to be around the two low pressure systems, the main low pressure systems that are out there across the Gulf and eastern waters, above 4,000 feet across the Gulf, and lower levels for the eastern waters of the Bering. Low pressure, here's the jet stream trough, a little bit of a polar influence there, only 40 to 50 knots. The main subtropical jet stream is still staying much to our south with a strong westerly flow south of the chain and Gulf at 140 knots. Looking at your 9,000 foot level winds for Thursday, here's your low pressure system across the eastern areas of the Bering. So flow around this is going to be more northerly, but lighter across the western waters. Easterly flow across much of the state. And the low pressure system here in the Gulf is going to have a little bit stronger speed max across the eastern waters. Now your 3,000 foot level winds, very similar stack system here, low pressure in the Gulf, easterly flow across the state, primarily 25 to 35 knots statewide, and then northerly flow on the backside of the Bering low between 20 to 30 knots across those waters. Now for your turbulence, to sum it all up, main concerns are going to be across the northern tier of the state, and don't forget about those thunderstorms for Thursday afternoon and evening.
Welcome to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, and joining us once again is our good friend Eric Stevens from GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska. He is here and has been here many times to talk to us about weather satellites and how those can help Alaskans understand our weather, how we can do better detection, keep more people safe from things even like volcanic ash. But today, Eric, you're going to talk to us a little bit more about weather satellites and how that can keep Alaskans safe and protect our property from wildfire, right?
That's right, Dave. Today's topic is where there's smoke, there's fire. And thanks for having us back again to Alaska
Anytime.
Weather. Well, weather satellites have a lot of different instruments on them. It turns out that the electromagnetic spectrum has a lot going on in it, and only one part of that is visible light, what we see.
Right.
Weather satellites, of course, report that. Today's topic is wildfires.
Okay.
There are some people who say that in Alaska in the summertime, you don't have severe weather. These people are usually from Oklahoma or somewhere. And F5 tornadoes tend not to occur in Alaska.
Right.
People have also said what we do have in the summer. What is Alaska's severe summer weather can be hydrology,
Right.
flash flood and erosion in the mountains and things like that, and fires, wildfires.
Absolutely.
Those were here in 2004, certainly remember that. We've got an example here from 2014. Now, it was a quiet season overall, but in May, down on the Kenai Peninsula, we had a wildfire on the Funny River, and this is a satellite image from a polar orbiter that went right over Alaska, and we can see the plume of smoke coming out of that fire on the Kenai, curling down. It's caught in the wind.
Right.
It goes down toward Kodiak Island, curves around. You can see it circulating around a low pressure system that's in the Gulf of Alaska.
It was a beautiful picture.
Oh my gosh.
Except there was a fire.
There's a fire there. The nice thing is with this satellite image, you can tell where the fire origin is, where the
Right.
smoke is coming from. And it's a color image. We're looking at the wavelength spectrum of about 0.4 to 0.7 micrometers or microns. That's what the human eye would see. If you were riding on the satellite and looked down, you could see this kind of an image.
Right.
So that's pretty nice. But it turns out there's more to the electromagnetic spectrum than just visible light.
Okay.
You've heard of infrared, ultraviolet, that kind of thing. If we move into longer wavelengths, let's go to one specifically, 3.7 micron.
Okay, 3.7.
Why worry about that one?
Okay.
Well, we've got an example here. 3.7, it turns out, happens to be very sensitive to a certain temperature range, temperatures where fires burn.
Okay.
And so we've got an example zoomed in a little more from that same Funny River fire down on the Kenai Peninsula, and we can see that you get up into a few hundred degrees Fahrenheit,
Right.
and that's where the colors are. We can see there on the Funny River fire to the west and to the east, almost a horseshoe shape there, is not only we're seeing where the fire is in a general sense, but specifically where it's the active fire
That is where
front.
it's burning right now.
And it's
Amazing.
3.7 microns is the important temperature there.
Okay.
That's right.
So this is really important to firefighters on the ground, people that are making plans and directing the firefighters on where they need to go and cut the trenches and keep people safe.
You know it. If you want to fight that fire, you got to know where it is.
Okay.
You got to know the leading edge. We've also got a movie loop, nothing quite like animating it in time.
Yeah.
You can see the fire spreading out over time with a succession of film or succession of images. Now, this is one channel, 3.7 micron. You know, we looked at that color smoke image before.
Right.
And that's actually a red, a green, and a blue. That's how you get color imagery. What if you took 3 different wavelengths in the infrared? You went from like 2.2 micron, 1.5 micron, up to 3.7. You mix them together, you get this other kind of color image, which is even a better way to sharply bring out the details of where that leading edge of the fire is.
Okay.
You'll note, though, in the infrared, guess what? We don't see the smoke. That's too bad. And on these movie loops, you can see the clouds go by. These channels can't see through clouds. The lesson is there's no one perfect solution. You got to have the visible, got to have some of that infrared single 3.7 channel, some of the infrared mixing to help get a different perspective. Another one, we've talked before about a fun channel called the day-night band.
Yes, one of my favorites.
Oh yeah, and in Alaska in the winter, it's great. We've got all this darkness. The day-night band is so sensitive to seeing light. You can see features that otherwise aren't available. Now in Alaska, when you have a forest fire, it tends to be light out all the time.
Right.
It's our summer. But we can go down south to the Rim Fire in California in 2013. Now, okay, it was in California, not Alaska, but Alaskan crews went down to fight that fire, so we can talk about it here on Alaska Weather. Here we have a 3.7 micron channel shot of the rim fire, again, kind of a horseshoe shape, showing that active fire front down there. And then we'll look again to the day-night band the visible light, and then you can see how the fire is all bright. You can see the active fire front and actually the city lights over there too. Turns out that the cities, while they're active in a social sense, are not really hot in a fire sense. So they don't show up in the 3.7 micron. They're not hot like a fire is, but the fire in the cities look the same from a visible light perspective. And a fun thing here too is that we can see the smoke plume going north from the rim fire on the day-night band. So if we were ever to have, like in 2004 in Alaska, you get dark at night, we still had an active fire season that year.
Right.
That was, you know, that really bad year. The day-night band didn't exist then, but if we had fires now in August, we could use it then. The lesson here is weather satellites, they offer many different wavelengths of light. Some are used for different purposes, and some of these we just looked at tonight are especially helpful here in Alaska to find and to track the behavior of these wildfires so the crews can go out there and do their jobs.
Sure, sure. So a satellite toolbox for the firefighting crews and the fire weather forecasters, and it just underlines how important satellites are, especially for Alaska and our mission for the National Weather Service to protect life and property, and also to enhance the national economy. So wonderful stuff there, Eric. And people can look at pictures like this anytime by going to gina.alaska.edu. You'll find images there all around Alaska at various times of the year, and not just about fire weather, but volcanic ash and smoke and anything else you want to check out. They're always beautiful pictures and always interesting to look at no matter what time of the day. Thanks again for joining us, Eric. We appreciate it and welcome you back anytime. For this edition of Alaska Weather Facts, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider. See you next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Okay, now we're going to wrap up today with our marine discussion, taking a look first at the ice edge. What we're going to continue to see is the southern Chukchi Sea is going to be continuing to erode, and also along the Norton Sound, we're looking for continuing for this ice to melt. So just floating ice chunks in this area is going to continue to break up as we head through the next few days. Now take a look at the southeast forecast for your Thursday, looking at primarily an offshore flow component for the inner channels between 10 to 15 knots, outer waters 10 to 15 knots as well. Seas across the inner channels are going to be between 2 to 3 feet and about 6 feet across those outer waters. For your Friday forecast, looking for a change of wind direction, primarily from the east to southeast direction across the area between 5 to 15 knots for your winds. Now, seas will be between 2 to 6 feet with the highest seas across the outer waters. Now let's take a look at the Thursday forecast for the North and West Gulf. Look for 20 knots out of the east, more of a northerly flow for the Prince William Sound, Cook Inlet locations, and more of a easterly direction for the southern tip of the Cook Inlet there. So seas on this day will be 4 feet across the inlet and south, and across the outer waters looking at seas between 6 to 7 feet with 2 feet across Prince William Sound. Now for your Friday forecast, light winds are going to be in the forecast still, mainly under small craft that is. Easterly to northeasterly flow across the Kenai Peninsula there and the Gulf waters, looking for seas on this day between 4 to 5 feet with lower seas, of course, for the Prince William Sound at 2 feet. Now for the southwest on Thursday, looking for a northerly flow across the area, low impact at 10 to 20 knots. Seas on this day are going to be between 3 to 5 feet, higher seas across the Gulf side. A little bit higher seas there for Shelikof too at 7 feet for Thursday. And then for Friday, looking at lower wind speeds with northeast becoming more northerly across most of the area. 1 to 5 foot seas, a little bit higher seas in the Pacific there. Across the Pacific, we're looking at 6 feet for your Friday. And then for the Aleutian chain, looking at a northerly wind flow pattern with a ridge out there. It's going to be fairly uniform out of the north. And then seas on this day are going to be ranging between 4 to 7 feet. Looking at your day on Friday, a little bit stronger wind coming through the central waters down through the central Aleutians and eastern Aleutians. So picking up to small crafts out there to the east, out of the northwest, and a little bit lighter wind speeds persisting for the western part of the chain. Seas on this day are going to range between 4 to 8 feet with the higher seas towards the eastern and central Aleutians. Looking at your west coast forecast For Thursday, a northerly flow, small crafts there across the northern waters. Lighter wind speeds to the south. Seas on this day are going to be between 2 to 6 feet. Higher seas out there towards the north and central Bering waters. Now on your Friday, expect those winds to be coming up across the area out of the north and west directions, looking for seas between 3 to 8 feet. Higher seas out towards the Pribilof Islands. Now for your north and west coast, we are going to be seeing small crafts across most of the area, brisk wind there to the north, 30 to 35 knots, gales out towards Kaktovik, and northerly flow towards the Bering Strait, seas between 2 to 6 feet. Looking at your forecast for Friday, a very persistent pattern, 35 knots picking up towards Prudhoe Bay, and then making a northerly turn for the Bering Strait locations, small craft between 25 to 30 knots, and then seas will be between 4 to 6 feet. Now let's take a look at your forecast recapping for tonight's weather. Thunderstorms are possible mainly across the Alkion border there and along the eastern Alaska range, looking for shower activity across much of the southern areas of the state. And we'll see some patchy fog along the north coast with that stronger flow on the north and west coast. Bering will be fairly quiet with a ridging in place, and shower activity across the southeast will taper off tonight, and then tomorrow drying off, but then increasing again for the afternoon. Shower activity still most prevalent across the south central and southwest locations, drier to the north, stronger winds, and the Bering keeps that ridge in place through Friday, with shower activity mainly across the southern tier of the state, thunderstorms possible once again across the central interior and the southwest. Have a good night. We'll see you tomorrow.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.